This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joie.
Brought to you by Mint Mobile. Stay tuned for a special offer at the end of the show. Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joie, and today is Thursday, June 19th, 2025. And I've got the excellent Enrique here with me from Cybernut. Hi, Enrique. How are you?
Hi, Miriam. It's so nice to see you. So nice to hear you. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. I think the last time I saw you was like December.
Yes.
In your neck of the woods, too, in Florida.
Yes. You, the whole tech crew came down to Miami, and I was so surprised that any tech company was holding an event down here. And so I said, well, I need to make my way down there, whether the PR people agree or not. I'm still going to show up so I can see everybody.
You crashed the party.
Yeah, I crashed the party. I had to crash. I had to see everybody, and I had to see you. I got to see you and then everybody down there, and it was a good time.
No, it was lovely to see you. So I wanted to have you on the show because there's a bunch of cool stuff going on. We don't have I have one little surprise for the audience today. I got a phone today. That's cool. And I can talk about it first day, which is great. But mostly there's all kinds of stuff about, upcoming phones that matter to us, particularly in North America, but worldwide too, like the Samsung folding phones. Lots of rumors about that. Some good stuff there. We got some news around the Nothing products that are coming. And again, this is, a lot of his leaks and rumors. So, don't take this as gospel. And then we have a bunch of stuff around OnePlus as well. And then, all kinds of it's summer. So China's going nuts launching new phones. And there's a few that I kind of picked and I want to kind of go quickly through and highlight for those of you in other parts of the world that are looking forward to these devices. I think it's going to be helpful to know what the dates are and what to kind of expect. Some of the companies more and more companies actually are teasing now, Enrique. This is a thing. I think they all learned from OnePlus. I blame Carl Pei for all of this.
So what are these companies doing? Is they're teasing phones?
Yeah, they're showing renders or showing even one photo of the side of the phone or something. They're just it's kind of totally like OnePlus. Every week we're going to show you something new. And people are like, oh, really? Okay. I'm into that. I guess, I don't know.
I mean, you got to show a little leg and then tease a little thigh. I mean, it makes sense. It's if they want to be in the media attention, they have to be teasing, making noise. And now that everyone's kind of on that, then that just means they're news all the time.
I kind of feel like it also goes well with, India and the markets there that are, very much on spec, they're leaking specs and not leaking, but teasing specs. And also, they want that some of the devices we're going to talk about are not like high-end devices, but they're interesting devices. One of the trends that you'll see when we talk about this is battery capacity is over 7,000 milliamp hour on these phones that are normal size, right? Mm-hmm. And I've got one of them here that I kind of reviewed last week on the show, the Realme GT7, 7,000 milliamp hour battery in that thing. It just, You can get 3 days out of it, and, if you're not heavy using.
Yeah.
And it's really impressive, to be honest with you. So, that's kind of what I picked the ones that I felt are coming soon and are interesting because of either a leak or a rumor or a teaser from the company that seemed to tickle my brain in some way. Let's start with Samsung though. We know that sometime in July, possibly the second week, it's kind of unclear right now, but knowing that Samsung's got a big share of the US market, I don't see them screwing this up and doing it during July 4 weekend or during the holiday.
That would be annoying.
Right? So it's either before that or after that. And I kind of feel like it might be after, to kind of get that news cycle going a little longer than, getting interrupted by a holiday. So the folding phones, that's what the Unpacked is going to be about. We don't really know anything other than a whole bunch of leaks that have been coming in, an avalanche of rumors. And I want to start with a big one. Last week, we briefly talked about this, that I wasn't sure. I was I really want them to be competitive and do something that's thin and has a better aspect ratio. You know how the folds have always been tall and skinny and narrow in terms of the front display. And skinny, I don't mean by the thickness of the phone, but the width of the front screen, right? And so the last year, they kind of went a little wider, but they still had a very thick phone. And it still didn't have the same kind of aspect ratio when you closed it as like a Pixel 9 Pro Fold or OnePlus Open or like, any of the Chinese foldable book style phones. And it looks like from the leaks that we're getting right now that not only is this thing going to be competitively thin, like we're talking less than a centimeter thick, so less like roughly the thickness of an iPhone 16 Pro Max or of a Galaxy S25 Ultra, which is kind of the state of the art right now from China, like the Oppo Find N5 that I have, which is the successor to the OnePlus Open, right? Is super thin. The Magic V3 from Honor from last summer, super thin. There's a Vivo coming up we're going to talk about that's also super thin. And then, we're hearing rumors of the Honor Magic V5, which is a replacement of the V3 because they skipped the number 4 in China. And so these are all like, we're talking 4 millimeters open, like 9 something closed, and then the latest rumor here is, get this, Galaxy Z Fold 7 might be 3.9 millimeters thick when open and less than 9 millimeters closed. And that could be for a week or something until Honor comes out. Although I think Honor is launching before Samsung at this rate because they don't care about US holidays. They might be the closest to second in terms of thickness, at least for a short time until Vivo does its thing and whatever, right? And that's what I want from Samsung. We know they have the chops, right? So how do you feel? Do you think this obsession with thinness on folding phone particularly is matters, or do you think that it's just a gimmick and stupid and Samsung shouldn't even bother?
I guess it really depends on how. Okay, yes, it's nice to be thin. It's pretty to be thin, on the phones, and it makes for more attractive marketing, and it makes for more attractive, like, oh, we made the thinnest smartphone profile ever, blah 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 blah, whatever. But at the end of the day, does that trade-off, if there is one, I don't personally have experience with very many foldables as much as you, but maybe you can answer this for me. I'm going to answer your question with a question. Does the thinness of these foldables going thinner and thinner, does that compromise in battery life and usability?
Well, so that's a good question. And I think that no is a general answer because silicon carbon batteries have kind of solved that problem.
Okay.
And honestly, Honor was the first, and I would say Huawei as well, because, even though they're separate companies, it's very iffy as to whether they really are separate companies. But silicon carbon, they were the first to do it. And it really paid off because even before the Magic V3, which was really the first, last year's V3, which is about to get replaced by the V5, was the first book-style folding phone that was, when closed, the same size as a normal high-end flagship bar phone. 9-ish millimeters, 10-ish, a bit less than 10, which is a centimeter. Okay. And that's the goal. And I think that's what matters, is that you want a phone in your hand that can be used like a normal phone from the front screen. You don't have to make any compromises. The cameras are still good. Battery life is still as good. You get all the features, wireless charging, blah, blah, blah. And then, boom, you open it up, you get twice the screen real estate or 2.5 times the screen real estate, and you can be more productive. This is what, and for a long time, I didn't get this because the only player in town was Samsung. And Samsung has never done the book style, in my opinion, the book style folding phone right.
Okay.
And it's, again, what I talked about earlier, the skinny aspect ratio, this super narrow, super tall front screen that doesn't look like a normal phone.
I agree because I've heard this note from people or from owners that have the Fold. They say, or either they've had it or they were considering it. And they said that, oh no, it's just a thick phone in general when you're using it as a phone. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think people use the foldable as a phone, like to make phone calls when it's open. It's closed.
No, you always close it for that.
Exactly.
It's very cumbersome to do it open, right? Plus, there's no earpiece there. So what are you going to do? You can do it with speaker calls, right?
Sure.
And the first phone to really deliver on that is, I think, the Magic V3 from last year. And then Oppo followed up with the Find N5, which is a successor to the OnePlus Open, which was called the Find N3, right? And then also in between there, Google did the, Pixel 9 Pro Fold, which, as we all know, is very competitive in terms of things. It's a little bit more than the Magic and then the Oppo, but it's still quite a bit thinner than like any Samsung folding phone has ever been. And so we were all asking, especially when last year's Z Fold 6 came out, like, where is Samsung here? Like, they are the leader. They're the first ones. They're on Gen 7 years of book-style folding phones. And, that's why we have a lot of high expectations on this launch, because they have to deliver. And the Chinese have showed them the way. Like, you want a phone that, when closed, looks and feels exactly like a normal phone, which means normal aspect ratio, right? Like 20.9 by 9, 21 by 9, something like that. And then you want like less than 1 centimeter, not counting the camera bump. And that's, I think, what they're going to deliver. The rumors are just flabbergasting me, because I'm like, wow, all this complaining about Samsung and the competition from China, and they're finally, it's like the giant just woke up and went like, oh, wait. And then simultaneously, we're getting leaks now, and I didn't put that in the show notes, but today we got a leak of what the Z Flip7 is going to look like. This is the Motorola Razr competitor.
Yes.
And dare I say, it's a Motorola Razr. It's got a full screen in the front with the cameras jutting through. I mean, again, these are leaks.
Really quick before we go to the Flip, I'm looking at the leak from the Fold.
It's amazing, right?
Of that retail display, and it gives us a really good idea of what this profile is going to look like, and it looks quite good. It's so slim and sleek.
If you look at the last rendered picture, this looks basically like my Find N5. The USB-C port is exactly the height of the phone. That's exactly
insane.
What we're seeing here.
I mean,
but on the Find, there's a bit more thickness below the USB-C, whereas here it's equal thickness above and below. So I think that 3.9 millimeter rumor might be accurate, because the Find N5 is, I believe, 4.2.
Wow, nice. I'm gonna go in here to the Flip now to see this. It looks nice. It looks very nice. Actually, I have a Flip 5 somewhere, but I don't have it with me.
Yeah. So the Flip 6 was the same as the Flip 5, with where that screen kind of like goes around the cameras, and that's fine. But again, last year we were like, wait, all you did was upgrade the chip. Like, what? Or maybe they went to a 50 megapixel camera instead of
literally
12. But it was nothing, right? And it's like the battery's a little bigger, whatever. But like, come on, like, meanwhile, we're on the third year of Moto making a Razr that the entire front screen is a front screen. Like, like there's like, what? Come on, Samsung. So, but that's why I'm making fun, because it's really just copying the Razr at this point. It's like there's no, the slides are more slab, like more flat, because the Razr has these nice round sides. But other than that, and then of course it's a Samsung, so you get One UI 7, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And if you like that, good on you, because I don't. I'm not talking to you specifically. I'm talking to the audience here. But I'd rather have a Razr. I'll be frank with you, especially after reviewing the Razr Ultra. My reviews on Hot Hardware, I posted and talked about it on the podcast when I had the phone. I don't think you can beat the Razr Ultra right now. Like, 8 Elite, like it's got everything. They rectified the problem with the cameras. Like, so if Samsung can somehow even make better cameras than the Razr, at that point, to me, the Z Flip 7 would become interesting again, because that's the only thing right now that's a problem with a lot of these ultra thin phones and folding phones, is the cameras are not quite at flagship level, except for the Chinese, the folding phones from like Honor and Oppo. Although Oppo did make a worse ultra wide than the OnePlus Open on the N5, which is the successor, because they wanted to be thinner. But they added wireless charging, which wasn't on the Open. So, you get some, you love some. The point is that if you look at like the Galaxy S25 Edge, which I've talked about in the last 2 or 3 podcasts, I've reviewed also on Hot Hardware, 5.8 millimeters. They made compromises on the camera, right? Like it doesn't have a telephoto. It's a very good camera system. It's definitely a flagship phone. But you're asking about the compromise on battery life. In the case of the Edge, Samsung did compromise on the battery life, but they could have put a silicon carbon battery and not compromise on battery life. I don't know how Samsung can make this phone that we're seeing renders of, the folding one, not the flippy one, without a silicon carbon battery, which would be a first for Samsung. Because like the Find N5 has a silicon carbon battery, the V3 has silicon carbon from Honor, the Magic. The upcoming Magic V5 will obviously also have a silicon carbon. That's the only way to fly. So if Samsung doesn't do that, that means the battery life is not going to be as good as the competition.
But if Samsung did that, they wouldn't give you a reason to upgrade next year.
Yes, but also Samsung is got a lot of trauma still from the Note 7 fire. And I think part of the reason we didn't see the silicon carbon battery in the Edge is because A, they're testing the market and they want to see if it'll stick. Do people care about a thin phone? And then 2, cost. So, and 3,
of course,
what if it burns and and you know, but for this, I think they're forced to to get that 3.9 millimeters thickness. There's no way they can do without, especially if they have wireless charging, because then they need a wireless charging cord in there.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I don't see Samsung removing wireless charging because in North America, that's like table stakes. Like everybody's got a car with a charging mat,
right?
Like, using Android Auto all day, driving around town. And they want their freaking phone to keep charged, and they're not going to plug it in because it's a pain in the butt. So I don't know. I like to believe that Samsung has the chops, and that's why I like what I'm seeing here. Even though I'm not a big fan of One UI, I believe in Samsung, and I just hope they don't mess it up. Don't give us a regular battery. Don't give us like major compromise on the camera system. I mean, the rumors, and they in their own marketing material that they've emailed publicly to us. I'm not talking about PR materials here. I'm stuff like, I'm on some mailing lists of products. They've been using that word ultra when describing this Fold7. So is it going to have an ultra level camera system? I feel like it's going to be kind of halfway between the S25 Ultra and what we've seen in previous folding phones from Samsung in terms of kind of like the Edge, where it has a 200 megapixel main sensor, but then it has a 12 megapixel ultra wide. And I think that's totally fine by me. But I want a telephoto, so hopefully they can put not just a crappy 3x, but maybe a 5x or something. Because when you have a 200 megapixel main sensor, you can zoom to 3x, no problem, right? You can feed that gap between 1x and 5x. So if it started at 5x, then it would make a lot more sense. So we'll see what happens, but I'm super excited about these leaks because I'm like, finally, Samsung, the giant, is waking up. And related to that, Samsung, I saw an article, I think it was on 9to5Mac, I think it was Ben who wrote it, where, Pixel is switching to TSMC for manufacturing the Tensor chips away from Samsung's foundry that normally manufactured the chips, because Tensor essentially grew out of Exynos, right? So it's getting further and further away from Exynos now because Google's owning more and more of the design of it. But, the strong rumor that they're going to switch to TSMC, and we all know the TSMC chips are always more efficient and better and faster and cooler and everything else, cooler temperature-wise. And I think that's good news for Tensor G5 on the Pixel 10 series, But apparently Samsung was completely taken by surprise about that. And this is what I'm talking about. It's I feel like Samsung is so much in their own little vacuum the last few years of cruising along on their success that they don't realize what the rest of the world is up to. And I think this is a wake up. We're seeing them, okay, now they're making competitive folding phones with the Chinese. Yes. Maybe silicon carbon in there. Yes. Finally a Z Flip that competes with a Razr. Yes. And now we're hearing rumors that they are completely flabbergasted by the fact that Google wants to use TSMC. Well, duh. Exynos sucks. And Samsung, is just cruising on going well, what's the problem with that? And I look around, okay, people are complaining all the time about the Pixel's performance and battery life and all that, right?
Yeah, and all the time.
So, and heat and whatever. So of course we want a more efficient and better chip. And if TSMC can make a Tensor chip that's better, but why would Samsung be surprised by that? And that's what I'm telling you. It's a cultural problem within that company.
I think that Samsung has gotten to the point where they can afford to kind of just cruise by because they're so big because of, you can tell by just...
big in the West, right?
Oh,
and
is
in their
that?
Own market. Because they don't have China. Nobody buys a Samsung phone in China.
Okay. Yeah.
You have way more choices And it's Korea. They kind of look down on it. They're like, why would we buy something in Korea? We have all this great choices here.
I mean, they have the U.S. market in a chokehold.
Well, yeah, but they have U.S., they have Europe, they have other markets like Middle East and whatever. But I'm saying like China is such a juggernaut. Like think about it, right?
Yeah.
Here's something you have to remember: the middle class in China is as big as the entire population of the U.S.
Oh, okay.
The middle class has the buying power. Okay, so imagine, like the scale of what some number of subscribers carriers have, what number of phones Huawei and Oppo and Vivo and all these Chinese brands sell. Like it's tenfold what we, like Huawei probably sells 10 times the flagships in China than Samsung sells in the US because of the population sizes. Right? And that's why the Chinese are so strong at making phones. It's not just because they're good and they have the supply chain and they have the engineering and the manufacturing and everything is local and they don't have to import anything. That helps. But it's also like they have billions of people buying the stuff.
That's
so Samsung,
right on there.
Yes, they're successful in our eyes because we go out there and we see, I mean, I'm sorry, but I still see more iPhones than I see Samsung phones out there by a long shot. And so, yes, they're successful, but they're, I like a distant number two, right? In the US at least. And then, here in San Francisco, in the Bay Area, Google is such a strong force and people are a little bit more independent minded and pixels are everywhere. Like we have so many pixels here. It's like, I'm always flabbergasted when I walk around and I'm like, whoa, this random person has a pixel. Yeah. And then, or I see like OnePlus, like not as much, but like, I think this is because we're in Silicon Valley and people are like, I'm not necessarily going to buy, Apple's Kool-Aid here. But it's interesting. And I feel like Samsung has been cruising along and I'm really glad they're waking up because look, they have the chops. I believe in them.
Yeah, they started the trend. So
I mean, they invented the freaking folding phone. Yeah. At first, it was pretty messy, but so yeah, I think this is cool. Nothing. Let's talk about Nothing because I don't know how much have you been following Nothing.
So I've followed them to the point of. So I know that they've been putting out phones. They're not necessarily up in the top tier of devices. They're more so kind of laying comfortable in the mid range and the. When they started in the 350, now they're probably in the 600-ish kind of price bracket.
The Phone 2, which was their flagship last year, was I want to say 649. It was around there, yeah. And they always pick like the one chip below the top, like the rumors actually this week are, and it's actually not a rumor because I believe. Nothing confirmed it, that it's using a Snapdragon 8S Gen 4. And that chip was announced a month ago or something. And it's basically the chip right below the 8 Elite. Like it's still on the 8 series, but it's slightly detuned. And so it's a little more affordable, but it still gives you like solid flagship performance, So, that's good news on the Phone 3. And, the rumors are it doesn't have the glyph in the back in the traditional sense of like segments of light. It has a matrix of like takes up a big chunk of the back, like probably half of it. So, and you can program it to display a little, ticker tape or something like, or emoticons. And like, I think it's very cool. Like, what do you think? Like, I personally like everything Nothing does just because I love the design and I love, I like what Carl Pei is doing. I like when he was at OnePlus. I like the software is really, really good on their phones, like really good. And the specs are pretty solid for the price. It's good value. So I'm on board, but I could live without the glyph. Like I don't need the glyph. I just think it's nice to have. And for some people, I can see how it's useful because you can it can show you timers. It can show you like with the existing, just the bars right now, show you timers, show you like your volume, animate to music. If you want a silent alarm, you can have your phone with your screen down on your table and you can just have the glyph go off. It's great. It's like, but do I need it? No. It's just, I'm really excited to see what they're doing with Phone 3 because so far this year, we've only gotten mid-range phones with the 3A series. And then we got the super awesome 279, the only phone you'll need ever because it has everything for 279, the CMF Phone 2 Pro. My review for that is coming up soon on Gear Diary. And I reviewed it, I think, on the show a couple of weeks back. But basically, it's like a $500 phone, like a Pixel 9a or like a, Moto Edge or like, one of those mid-range, good, solid phone that you would recommend to people who don't want to spend more money. But instead of $500, it's $279. That's basically it. It's got an NFC. It's got 3 actually really good cameras, a telephoto, regular, and ultra wide. It has 5,000 milliamp battery. It has a beautiful 120 hertz OLED. It has a decent, fast enough processor that you can game on it. Enough RAM, enough storage. It's just great.
I really like that Nothing, okay, I know that Nothing came out with their phones with this new glyph thing on the back that really caught a lot of people's attention. It was very unique for a smartphone. It was something that would call people's attention. It was something that made people talk about it. Even if you saw a stranger on the street with it and their phone was flashing, you'll be like, "Whoa, what is that?" It looks like something otherworldly. And I'm sure that some people are kind of upset, like, "Oh, it's not going to have the glyph on the new phone or whatever." But this is kind of an evolution of the glyph because it still gives people a unique thing to talk about for the Nothing Phone 3. And even though we don't know what it looks like yet, but we have an idea based on how they've been kind of leaking things and how they've been kind of teasing stuff, But this matrix that they use is very on brand for Nothing because that's how their UI looks.
I mean, that's the entire UI, right?
Yeah,
and I love their UI because of it. Like their widgets are really great. And, you don't have to use like any of it if you don't want it. It's still a very stock Android experience. And the hardware is really delightful and the specs are really good and the cameras are decent and they have a relatively interesting AI hub that, called the Essential Space. I'm not into it, but like I can see how some people would dig it. Like we're seeing that from Moto as well with the AI key on the Razr now, and OnePlus has announced that they're going to be making, having an AI suite like hub on their phones coming up as well. So that's a trend I think we're going to see more and more. Of course, on Pixel you have Gemini that you can launch from using the power lock key. But yeah, I think Nothing is onto something with this matrix in the back. But what I'm more excited about is that headphones are coming. And there's more stuff leaking about that right now. We have pricing, $299 for a pair of ANC wireless Bluetooth high quality headphones. Like I think in typical Nothing fashion, these are going to compete with the new XM6s from Sony, with the Bose Quiet Comfort, whatever the latest version is, QC 300 or whatever. I don't know. I don't follow Bose. I'm a Sony person when it comes to wireless ANC. That's also why I'm curious about how good these are, because I know what I want. I travel a ton. I fly a lot. I wear these Sonys all the time. I don't have the XM6 yet, so I still have the XM4 and the 5s. The 4 I travel with because they fold. The 5 don't fold, but I use them at home when I need some peace and quiet. Otherwise, I use my studio phones, which are wired. And then I have the 6 are coming, folks. Stay tuned. I'm talking to Sony. I'm not in the first tier or second tier even, so they've promised me a pair, so I will eventually be able to tell you my thoughts. And I'm looking forward to them because they fold. So I'll be able to use them as my travel headphones again. But I'm excited to see what Nothing does with these, because here's the thing. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to use their earbuds, but they make some of the best earbuds on the market today. Like overwhelmingly good. Like better than, in my opinion, AirPods Pro, better than like Galaxy Buds Pro or whatever current one is, Buds 3 Pro, I think
it's Buds 3 Pro, yeah.
Don't get me wrong, the Samsung ones are great. I really like them. But like Nothing has, their sound signature is really, really, really good. They sound really good out of the box. You can tune them with EQ if you want to change them a little bit. They have decent ANC and they have good controls, like the squeeze stuff, like just like high-end earbuds. And then they have wireless charging. And then they cost like less than $200, all of them. And some of the cheaper ones are really quite good. Like the CMF buds are like $59, and they just, honestly, they're better than any AirPods or whatever at that price point. Like you just can't compete. Now in China, it's a whole different story. You know, there's a whole bunch of really affordable, decent earbuds. So I think they're kind of bringing some of that to the West. Nothing with their range of affordable and high-end earbuds. And then, you know, the only other earbuds that I use quite regularly that I absolutely love, that really can, like, I think are up there with nothing, are the OnePlus buds. And the current ones that I'm using are the OnePlus Buds Pro 3. Mm-hmm. They just announced a pair of OnePlus Buds 4, non-pro. So I'm really curious to see how good they are. The rumor on these is that they have a dual DAC. So they actually have, you know, 2 drivers. That's not unusual per ear, but they have separate amps and separate DAC for each driver in each ear.
Nice.
So it should be really interesting to see, because in my opinion, every time OnePlus seems to be outdoing themselves. Like the pros that I have here are really good, but last year the Pro 2s I had, when the non-Pro 3s came out, the regular 3s, they were better than the Pro 2s. And then
I see
the Pro 3s came out, which I'm using right now. And then we're about to get the 4 non-pro. And I'm wondering if, again, the 4 non-pro with these dual driver, dual DAC, dual amp are going to be better than my Pro 3s that I'm using right now. And if that's the case, then kudos to OnePlus, because again, you know, right now I'm telling you, I'm a bit of an audiophile. You know, I worked in sound for years in video games. I'm a reluctant audiophile because I want to be that jerk. But at the same time, I do have very high standards in my sound quality preferences.
Yeah.
And the only thing I'm using right now, the only thing I would recommend to anyone who's buying a pair of earbuds right now is OnePlus, Nothing, or Samsung. Forget Apple. They're not in the ball game. They're good if you're an Apple user and you like that automatic switching between all your devices and you're willing to sacrifice a little bit of sound quality. 100%. But in my mind, it's like, why would you spend more, like $100 more on AirPod Pros than you would on a pair of OnePlus or Nothing buds that are probably better, in my opinion, sound quality? Yeah, you lose some of the convenience, but whatever. It's Bluetooth. It works, okay?
Exactly.
And they have all the codecs. They have like LDAC and LHDC and all that other good stuff, right? So you don't have to worry about that. And so I'm really curious to see what Nothing does with headphones, because I'm like, also they announced a partnership with KEF, the British speaker manufacturer, KEF. And that worries me a little bit, because I'm worried, like, are we going to actually get a worse audio experience because they're trying to brand it, you know? Like, don't get me wrong, KEF makes great things, but partnerships, you know, it took a while for Hasselblad to kind of really work out for OnePlus. And so I'm, at the same time, I'm like, I'm excited because potentially this could be really amazing. But at the same time, I'm like, ooh, don't mess this up, Nothing. Please don't mess this up. So yeah, that's kind of where things are. We'll find out soon enough. I believe their event has been announced for like July. I want to say July 1st or something. Yeah, July 1st. So we'll find out about the headphones and the phone with the new Evolve the Glyph soon. And then on July 8th, and the reason I have that date down is because that's when we get those Buds 4 from OnePlus and a Watch 3 small size. So I've got the Watch 3. I'm not wearing it right now. I'm wearing my Galaxy Watch Ultra. But I usually wear my OnePlus Watch 3 because it's my favorite smartwatch right now. Because I like a big chunky smartwatch. I like a round smartwatch. This isn't. I like long battery life, but I also want Android Wear or Wear OS, whatever. So OnePlus is the best of all worlds. But they just announced that my watch is a 46 millimeters diameter, and they had just announced a 43, so just a little bit smaller, with just a little bit less battery life, but the same exact specs. And I'm getting one soon, so I'll let you folks know once I'm allowed to tell you, once I get it, what I think of it. Same with the Buds. So stay tuned for July 8th for that. I think we're also going to get some OnePlus Nord phones, which are not going to be in the US, right? But whatever. So, I mean, can't get it all. How do you feel about the watches? Have you used any of the OnePlus watches? Have you been following?
I've personally not used the OnePlus watches. I've been using a Samsung Galaxy Watch 6, which I really like. I really like. I use it for fitness and lifting and sleep tracking, and it works for all of those things very well. But I am looking at this photo of the Watch 3, and it looks very like I wouldn't even recognize that this is OnePlus. It looks like an elegant a round watch.
Yeah, it's really nice. Are you looking at the 3 big size, or the one I have, or the one that's coming?
The one that's
size?
coming.
They're very similar, but the design is slightly different than the regular Watch 3. You can if you look at the same link that I'm looking at, right below the photo of the render of the watch, there's a link that says OnePlus sells for $349. If you click on that, you can see the big one. You see how where the buttons are? There's this kind of weird flat part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's been their design aesthetic for their watches for the last 2 generations. And strangely, the smaller watch does not have that design element. It's kind of perfectly round.
Yeah, I like
that. But anyway,
I'm
excited about the fact that they're making a small watch. It's not going to be for me. I like my watches really chunky and I got big wrists, but I'll try it out and let you know what I think. And then the buds I'm also looking forward to because I love the OnePlus buds. And then I have a special treat to show you all today. I was able to talk OnePlus into sending me this. This is the OnePlus 13S, the mini phone that's sold in India and in other parts of the world. I believe in China, it's called the OnePlus 13T. For those of you on Patreon right now, you're getting a treat. This is what it looks like. Here's the bottom. And notice that there is no alert slider, but there's a button there now. And we've seen this on the Oppo Find X8 Ultra, which is the super high-end camera flagship phone from Oppo, which I have. And basically what it is like the Apple action button. This can be reprogrammed right now by default. I've got it set to watch. If I press on it, it goes to, the different modes up there. You can see how they did a pill as well.
Uh-huh.
There you go. So now I've got it on vibrate. And by just keeping it held, but it's not as nice. I like the alert slider better, I'll be honest. But this phone, not only is this pink, which is freaking dope, but this is a flagship from OnePlus that's 6.3 inches. So it's the size of an iPhone 16 Pro regular and the size of a Pixel 9 Pro regular. So it's really compact. It has a massive 5,800 milliamp hour battery in there. Right, of course it does, because because OnePlus, and it does have it's like a AMOLED LTPO, of course. It's just a nice phone all around. It does have some quirkiness though. So 8 Elite, of course, 80-watt charging, but no wireless charging. And again, I think that's a market thing because it's not sold. It's sold in like Asia mostly, but primarily, the S is India and the T version are identical, and the T version is China. So 13T and 13S. And then it only has 2 cameras in the back. And you're going to say, okay, well, that's fine. The S25 Edge only has 2 cameras in the back. But do you want to guess for a second what those 2 cameras are? And this is where it gets a little, cringy for me, at least.
Well,
Take a wild guess. 2 cameras. What could they be? Don't worry about the specs, just the kind of cameras that they are.
Okay.
Telephoto, ultra wide, regular.
Well, I would assume it has a regular camera and an ultra wide. And then they omit the telephoto,
wrong.
Right? Oh. Wait, so they removed the ultra wide?
Yep, no ultra wide.
What?
They pulled the Moto Razr Plus from last year, the Razr Plus that had like a regular and a 2x telephoto. A useless, you have a 50 megapixel, very high quality main sensor that can do, it can do lossless 2x by cropping. You don't need a 2x telephoto, and then you remove the ultra wide. I don't understand, and the wireless charging. And Pixel 9 Pro has those things. iPhone 16 Pro has those things. Xiaomi 15, which is a 6.3 inch phone, has those things. All of these have flagship chips in them, 8 Elite or whatever. It's weird to me that they made a 13 numbered, so a brand matching their flagship, but then they just, and put an 8 Elite in it. But then they just just no ultra wide, no wireless charging. And India loves specs. India wants the ultra wide. You know that the people in India are going, what are you doing here?
I don't know. maybe it's just personally, but I kind of find myself using the ultra wide the least. But I get your point because
I mean, it's a flagship. That's all I'm saying. Like, I understand that you can live without it, but like,
yeah,
it's so weird.
it is weird because, like you said, the main camera overlaps with the 2x zoom because it can already just crop in and it's kind of
and I mean, if it was a 3x
acceptable.
zoom, if it
That's
was a 3x
exactly
zoom
what I was going to say.
with OIS, it doesn't have OIS on the telephoto either. So it's like, like it's basically like almost like we wanted to have two cameras at the back, so we put this 2x non-OIS kind of like it's both of them are 50, which is nice, but so technically, I guess you can zoom up to 4x pretty nicely with it because the 50 megapixel and the 2x can be cropped again.
Yeah.
But yeah, the ultra wide on a flagship, so bizarre, And then the wireless charging I can kind of live with because it's in that market, it's not critical, right? India doesn't care about wireless charging. They want to charge as fast as possible wired because they have the quality of their grid is not that good. They don't always have power available, so that they want to maybe when they're waiting for the train and the train station plug in for 10 minutes. That's where the 80-watt charging is really coming handy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So bring your mug back up. For those of you watching on Patreon, there's something very strange going on with your mug. It's a green mug, isn't it?
I have a green mug and it's a Nickelodeon mug, but because I'm on a green screen right now, it's completely green screening out.
It blends really nicely with your background. I love it. It's good.
Yeah.
See, folks, if you subscribe to the Patreon, you would get that. And in case you're wondering, it's patreon.com/TNKGRL. Go there and support me if you can. All right. So there's a couple of more things in kind of that I want to talk about here that are, I think, interesting and important. Last week, I told everyone that the Pixel 10 series, there was a rumor the Pixel 10 series, we talked briefly about the fact that, they're going to make the chip with TSMC, but that's old news now. But it's the new news about the TSMC is that Samsung woke up and wait, what? Kind of like, that John Travolta meme, like,
Yes.
Samsung was just like, what do you mean? Like 2 weeks ago, you just said TSMC and we didn't, and now we're reacting to that. And so that was funny. But the more important thing is last week on the show, I said that the rumors are that it was going to have MagSafe magnets, the 10 series, inside the phone. Not a case like OnePlus did with the 13. Not like, what Samsung's doing where it's Qi2 ready, but then you need a case for the actual magnets. And now, we're finding out that sad trombo, no, it's just going to be Qi2 ready and the magnets are going to be in the case. Okay, there's only one phone that's an Android phone that has magnets and Qi2 built into the phone. And that's like some mid-range HMD phone, all right, called the Skyline. Came out last year. How is it, I'm asking you this because you're a nerd like me, and you will be able to have judgment, positive or negative, but how is it that iPhones have had a magnet ring in the phone since the 12, except for the 16E. And even though the 16E does not have magnets, this is a 16E, and you can put a magnet case on it because there's wireless charging. How come Apple has it in all their phones for 4 years now? And we do not have a single Android phone that's Qi2 compatible that has magnets. Like, why? What's your theory?
Okay, so my theory is that Apple decided that MagSafe is important enough to have in the phone whether or not you put a case on it. But I think that Android manufacturers have decided that it's not as important because 98% of people that buy a smartphone are going to put it in a case. And most of the cases on the market, if not for original cases, aftermarket cases, already have a MagSafe. Yep. Like I have a OnePlus 13 and it doesn't have the MagSafe on them, but I have a case that I use on it that has it already built in. So I don't sometimes I use my phone with no case, but it's only when I'm at my desk, I think.
Right.
Or at the office.
You make a very good point, but I think it's also why, I'll be honest with you, I observe this here, at least in the Bay Area, a lot. A lot of iPhones here, still the majority of people, even though there's more Pixels than there is Samsungs, it seems. The iPhone users here, the vast majority of the tech nerd iPhone people, like the, Silicon Valley type, probably because they have money and probably because they can afford Apple Care Plus, do not use their iPhones with a case. So I'm actually wondering, you know how Android users are always perceived as cheaper, or you could be looking at it the other way by saying more money savvy, right? They get more value out of their phones because you get more specs, more features.
I like this.
You know, like, I mean, different people have different opinions there, but I think that most Android users put a case on their phone, 100%.
You know what? You make a point. You make a good point, because if there are people who are not using a phone case, it's mostly iPhones.
That's what I'm saying.
And sometimes they are all scuffed up, they're all banged up, they're all cracked up, and they're still using the phone with no case.
Yep. Again, here in the Bay Area, because they all have money, they just get a new phone. Because, like, you know, Apple just replaces it because they have like the 10, 15, whatever dollars a month of Apple Care Plus, you know?
Yeah.
And so they don't care.
Apple Care is my phone case. I don't need to.
And I feel like, honestly, this is another problem we have in Android land. You know, I'm a big Android user, and I really regret that it's so nice and easy to switch iPhones. Like, you lose your iPhone, you break your iPhone, you take a hammer to your iPhone, you literally walk to the Apple Store, get a new iPhone if you have Apple Plus, hit restore from iCloud, and everything, you're still logged in to all your accounts, for frick's sake. Like, how is it that we haven't been able to do this on Android? More importantly, I don't even want to necessarily be able to do it between Samsung and Pixel. But even within Pixel or within Samsung, how is it that nobody has done the kind of backup and restore, whether it's cloud-based or direct via cable, via Wi-Fi, that Apple offers, where every freaking last little binary bit that you set on that phone gets restored exactly the same way? Like, how is this something we haven't mastered yet in, what is it now, 17 years of Android? It pisses me off.
One word: fragmentation.
Yeah, Samsung could have done it inside of Samsung land.
But don't they already have Smart Switch? Or it's not.
But it doesn't copy your stuff with you logged in. Like,
you're right.
On an iPhone, you literally go to your Facebook app after you restore your phone, and you're still logged into Facebook. Same with a Mac. If you transfer from a new Mac to an old Mac, you know, even if you have software licenses, like you have Microsoft Office, a license for Office installed, it works.
Well, maybe you do make a point, though. If it's already logged in, that could be seen as a security
Well, no, because
flaw.
that's the thing. Android does not encrypt their backups.
Oh, that's where it is.
So Apple, when it backs up to iCloud, encrypts the backup.
Makes sense.
And then if you're not using iCloud, if you're just copying from one phone to the next, like over Wi-Fi, they're both connected to the same Wi-Fi. You know, like I don't know if you've ever done it, where like you scan the barcode that appears on the old iPhone with the new iPhone.
Yeah.
And then the first thing it asks when you turn on the new iPhone is like, do you want to back up from your old iPhone? And like, do you have your phone? If you don't have your phone, it does iCloud thing. But if you do have your phone, it just like scan the barcode. And then literally half an hour later, your phone is, everything is exactly the way you had. Like, it's uncanny valley. Like, it's like, how is it that we can't get this in Android? Like, and that's why also Android users use cases. Because when they break their phones, even if they have Samsung Care or whatever, what a pain in the ass it's going to be to restore that phone.
Agreed. In my case, I kind of enjoy it because it's like fun. Like, oh,
me too.
Let me pull all the folders. Let me back up all the WhatsApps. And it is an involved process. I agree. And that's where Apple is superior in the backup and restore front of just swapping a phone, something that everybody will do at some point.
Yeah, I just don't understand it. Anyway, I digress. But Pixel 10, no MagSafe, magnets, let's see how it pans out. But the other thing I want to talk about briefly is this Adobe camera app. This is called Indigo, Project Indigo, and this is the people who brought us the Pixel camera, and this is really, really exciting because I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Mark Levoy. Mark Levoy was an engineer at Google, and he's the one who gave us HDR Plus. He's the one who gave us night photography, astrophotography, all the features that super res zoom where it uses your handshake to get your better zoom. And, he went to Adobe a few years ago, and it was a big loss for Google. But he made a camera app for iPhone called Indigo, and that app is free. And you don't have to have an Adobe account to use it, which is freaking awesome. And you can now get your cake and eat it too. You can get pixel grade camera on an iPhone, which I haven't had a chance to install this yet on my 2 iPhones, but I'm going to because I want to try it out. And also it's coming to Android. We don't know exactly when and which phones are going to be supported, but stay tuned. I totally understand why I started with the iPhone because it's a unique single architecture. Everything is very similar across different iPhones, very similar sensors as well across different iPhones. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that pans out. Are you excited about it?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I definitely agree that there are some areas of the iPhone camera that could use some improvements. I have personally an iPhone 14 Pro, and it just bottom line, it does not perform as well in low light. And even in some zoom situations. And even when I was traveling with both the iPhone and a Google at the time Google Pixel 7 Pro, I always used the Pixel over the iPhone.
I'm on a 9 Pro XL now, and that's all I'm doing. I was on a 9 Pro Fold for a while, and it's great, but the camera is a little less, so I went back to a 9 Pro XL. And I'm really looking forward to the 10 Pro, to be honest. Because especially if Tensor G5 is TSMC, that's going to make a big difference.
I can't wait to see how that turns out as well, yeah.
Especially since we know the industrial design is going to be pretty much unchanged, and I love that current industrial design. It's really solid.
Yeah.
All right, let's rapid fire through a few items of news. These are more like, PSAs for you folks out there, so you know what's coming. I know a lot of you are listening from other markets. The Vivo X Fold 5 is the super slim folding phone from Vivo coming up. And we know it's coming June 25, so stay tuned for that. The company has teased some photos here. We can't really tell how slim it is, but it's looking really slim. If you look at the photo of it opened and laid down flat on this wooden loom there, Enrique, I don't know if you're seeing that.
Yeah, I see
you
that
can
one.
see how the USB-C port, it's actually can't fully fit on the side. Like it kind of butts into the back a bit.
It looks like it has a curved lower edge. Like it's not
curved lower edge, yeah.
Like it's not a square.
So I have a feeling that the rumors is going to be 9.2 millimeters thick when closed. Okay, so let's play a game here of iPhone 16 Pro Max, and what are the specs on that? It is 8.3. Okay, so 1 millimeter thicker than an iPhone 16 Pro Max.
Yeah, I mean it's in
Super
between.
thin.
It's between the iPhone thickness and then the iPhone thickness with the camera bump. It's
correct.
It's still comparable, I would say. I'm looking at this photo of the Vivo X Fold 5's battery next to a quarter.
Yeah, that's silicon carbon for you.
Wow, that's insane.
Right?
Next to these playing cards? Okay.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that's what makes that possible.
Yeah,
let's see
absolutely.
What other, yeah, this phone looks beautiful. And I like that they're not going hard on that hard edge curve, like the hard edge perimeter of the phone that iPhone's been doing, that everyone's been copying. I'm personally kind of over it. And I'm glad that we're kind of moving towards the smooth pebble edge again.
The Magic V3 from Honor last year is like that too. It's rounded like that.
Yeah.
All right. So the next one we have is the Magic V5, which is the replacement of the V3. Also ultra thin. July 2nd, mark your calendars. And this one is supposed to be even thinner than the Vivo and even thinner than the Oppo that I have and even thinner than last year's V3 and potentially even thinner than the 3.9 millimeter thick Z Fold 7 from Samsung. Brace your loins, folks. It's going to be something.
6100 milliamp hour, 66 watt charging.
I am excited about this one. The V3 last year was amazing. So, yeah, stay tuned, folks. We're going to find out, these are initially going to be launching in China, and then the Vivo probably won't come too far. Oppo's Find N5 that I have, the folding phone, the super slim, it's sold in China, but it's also sold in parts of Asia, but not even in Europe or in and never mind the US. And we never got a OnePlus Open 2, which is what it would have been. So, Vivo is probably going to be the same. But Honor does usually sell in Europe. So if you're in Europe and you're looking for, maybe you have a Magic V3 right now and you're like jonesing for even thinner, check it out. That's coming. And then Xiaomi is teasing their flip phone. And their flip phone is going to be called the Mi Mix 2. I have the Mi Mix Original. And this just looks like pretty much an evolution of that. I'm excited about it simply because it had really good cameras. It had the Leica cameras because it's a Xiaomi phone. And the only thing that was weird on the original, the Mix Flip, was that it did have the same setup as the OnePlus 13S. A telephoto and a regular, but no ultra wide, like the Razr Plus. And I don't understand what the hell happened there. But apparently that's been fixed with the Mix Flip 2, and it's getting a proper ultra wide instead of a telephoto, and big battery, and it's just an evolution at this point. But stay tuned for that. It's coming before the end of the month, but we don't know when. For now, it's just going to be China, of course. So, it's interesting because Oppo made a couple of flip phones and then they stopped. And now they're only doing fold book style. And Xiaomi didn't make any flips. And now, last year they made the Mix Flip. And now they're doing another one. So, but they're also still doing folds. So it's really interesting how some Chinese companies are like, oh, we're going to do this. And then others are like, no, not so much. And it's like a big mess.
That is interesting, but I guess it makes sense for some companies to focus on one of them over the other. Maybe they saw more success with the Flip product. Maybe they saw more success with the Fold product. So I understand.
I mean, it's also demand, right? Like, what they perceive to be demand.
Exactly.
The next two phones are interesting simply because they have bigger than 7,000 milliamp hour batteries in a regular size chassis. Now, I have covered it extensively in the last couple of shows the Realme GT7, which has a 7,000 milliamp hour battery that lasts 3 days, and it's incredible. But see, the reason I put these two items down that I'm about to mention is that this is becoming a trend in China for mid-range phones. So the first, mid-range to upper mid-range to lower flagship. Right. The first one we've got here is the K80 Ultra. K series from Redmi is always their flagship. And so this is going to have, a flagship grade chip. It's going to have flagship grade cameras and display. And Dimensity 9400 Plus, that's the best chip from MediaTek. But look at that battery, 7,410 milliamp hours.
Now,
it's insane.
Is this trend? So I have not been covering news
silicon
for a while,
carbon, right?
But so that's what it is. So silicon carbon batteries are able to have higher capacity.
They're going down market. Yeah. Well, your OnePlus 13 has a silicon carbon battery. That's why it has a 6,000 milliamp hour battery.
So it
Remember,
uses
your 13 is thinner than the 12 was.
Yeah. So it is able to yield more capacity in the same amount of space.
That's exactly what silicon carbon is all about.
Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah. It's a bit more delicate, so charging it is more complex and needs more, care. And also they tend to bulge over time. They're more likely to bulge over time, So, but you can control that. And again, it's up to the charging circuit to be very delicate with the battery. But they've clearly perfected it because they're charging some of these batteries at 80 watt, 90 watt, 100 watt, right? So,
yeah.
It'd be interesting to see how it pans out 2 or 3 years from now, right? But anyway, so K80 Ultra, mark your calendars for that one. That's coming soon. We don't have dates. Probably July sometime. And then Poco F7, I've got the F7 Pro, there's an F7 Ultra, but the F7 is like the kind of the base of that line. And yep, same deal, 7,550 milliamp hour battery.
Wow.
It charges at 90 watt. And it's got a Snapdragon 8S Gen 4, the same chip we're going to see in the Nothing Phone 3. And this is not a very fancy phone in any way, just mid-ranger, but with a close to flagship chip and a massive battery. That's the trend for mid-range or upper mid-range phones in China.
That's impressive.
I'm in love. 3-day battery life.
That sounds amazing. I think that now with these new batteries, companies are saying, "Oh, we can make them thin and last longer."
Yeah.
So that's
You have a choice. We can either make a super thin phone with the same battery life as your flagship a year ago, or we can make a normal thickness phone with, 3 days of battery life.
Give me 5 days of battery life.
It's coming.
My card is ready.
Do you know Realme did a prototype phone that was normal 8mm thick that had a 10,000 milliamp hour battery in it, like a few weeks ago? It's a concept right now, but it tells you where we're going. I believe that 5 years from now, or even less than that, 2 years from now, 10,000 milliamp hour phones will be a dime a dozen, and in the mid range, especially in China. All right, so now the next thing here is that the Poco F7 is coming June 24th, so mark your calendars. Last week, we talked about the Huawei Pura 80 Ultra, which is a top-of-the-line bar phone from Huawei, camera phone insanity. And the one thing that is unusual about it is that it has 3 lenses in the back, 50 megapixels each, ultra-wide main and telephoto. But the telephoto has a periscope where the top lens that you see can be swapped between 2 lenses. So it can go 3.2 or 9 point something.
Wow.
Right?
9 point something?
Yeah. So the way it does it, though, is by cropping the sensor as well. 3.7x, f over 2.4 on one lens, and then it flips lenses and it gives you a 9.4x, f over 3.6. The 3.7x is 50 megapixels, and the 9.4x is a crop of the center, so lossless 12 megapixel center. And it's got a massive sensor because of that. So the low light's going to be really good.
Oh, wow.
But the reason I put this article here is simply because somebody tore it down so you can actually see the guts of this thing. And if you're as much of a nerd as I am and you love cameras as much as I do, I recommend you watch that video. And this is purely a PSA. Just when you're done this podcast, go to the show notes, click on that YouTube, on that article, and you'll find a YouTube video. Watch that YouTube video because this is why Huawei dominates in innovation. Like, you look at the mechanical complexity of this, and you're like, they have to make it so it resists getting dropped. You know? And it has OIS on that, but it doesn't do optical stabilization. It has sensor shift. So like the iPhones, it moves the sensor around. It's freaking insane. Like this camera system, I just want to buy a Pura 80 Ultra from China, import it, just to try that out, just to see what it's like.
This is from the article. The lenses move on top of a motorized mechanism comprised of some 140 components. Truly impressive stuff here by Huawei.
Yep.
Wow, 140 components mechanical that drive this little camera module.
It's insane.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you're as much of a nerd as I am, all of you there, I know you are. Just you want it. Go check it out. Last couple of items we have to talk about are, this one's a good one. So you know how BlackBerry never seems to be able to die? Like, you know how, okay, so BlackBerry went out of business. They stopped making phones. BlackBerry, whatever OS, BlackBerry 10, OS 10, whatever, disappeared. It got acquired by QNX, and QNX now making car-based OS. Some of your cars out there are running old BlackBerry software. That's all good. But then TCL got a license to make BlackBerry phones. Remember that? And they made the Key 1 and the Key 2.
Yes.
Right? Which I reviewed at the time and loved. And, they're basically pretty solid Android phones in their time with a really nice BlackBerry keyboard. And we thought that was it. That partnership ended because they only had the license for so long, and we haven't seen anything since. The only thing we've really seen since that's as good and as awesome and as wonderful is Clicks, right? The cases. So there's a company who is selling new guts for an old BlackBerry phone. The BlackBerry Classic from 2014 can now be refurbished into a state-of-the-art, well, not state-of-the-art, because it's an LTE-based MediaTek Helio phone, so it's not super state-of-the-art, but it can be turned into an Android phone that's modern. 12 gigs of RAM, 256 of storage, 50 megapixel rear camera, 3,000 milliamp hour battery. That's a bit iffy. NFC for payments, the whole shebang.
Wow.
So you can either supply your own BlackBerry into the mod yourself, or you can buy one pre-modded. And I love that because I love the fact that it uses the old display, keyboard, and case of the old phone, and everything else is new. I love that, but I also love that BlackBerry will not die.
This is amazing. I'm looking
This
at
is
this now.
amazing, right?
I skimmed the headline and I was like, "Oh, what is this? Is this someone did this in their spare
Nope.
time in a lab?" No, they are selling this
Yep.
kit, or they're selling an old BlackBerry with updated guts that lets you use everything. Everything. You
Yeah.
can use bank apps. You can get your banking apps, like you can use your wallet. You can use it as a wallet. Like you can do everything on it. And with fully functioning keyboard and touchpad, that's amazing.
I know, it's incredible. I love it. And it's technically the last proper BlackBerry. Like, this was the last BlackBerry that BlackBerry ever BlackBerried, okay? So you're not getting crappy hardware. Like, it's, the display is probably not quite as good as modern display. Brightness is going to be an issue for sure. And it's not like an OLED or anything, but it's not a good display compared to today. But it's still good enough. And I think that the idea of this recycling idea is really exciting to me, actually. Because how many BlackBerry classics out there? Millions, and probably in drawers, in landfills, like whatever.
Oh, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, we need to see more of that. That really makes me feel a lot like that Fairphone, like recycling, rebuilding, reusing. Plus, if you're a BlackBerry fan, I mean, Clicks is great, but it's not really a phone, right? This is the real freaking deal.
This is it.
It'll say BlackBerry on it, and you're going to be using it in public, and people are going to freak the F out.
I need someone to do this with the BlackBerry Key 2 so that they can revive my Key 2 that I have in the
I agree.
drawer.
I think that will be the next one, that maybe this company will do it. And then the final news of the week, we have to make fun of this.
Oh my God.
Our fascist president decided that he was going to have his own phone service and phone. And because of course. And so, the end result of that is that we have a phone plan that costs $47 a month through a virtual network operator, of course. And 47 because 47, right? But it's way more expensive than a lot of these, virtual operators are, right?
Yeah.
First of all. And secondly, they're making a phone called the T1 that is supposedly, and this is a massive lie because it's been debunked a million times, and I'm going to put an article that debunks it in there. It's supposedly made in the US, but here's what we figured out. And I have to give kudos to Max Weinbach, who's been a guest on the podcast before, but Max is an analyst, and Max figured out that this is essentially a T-Mobile Revel 7 or whatever. And it's made by a company in Hong Kong. It's a Chinese phone made in China, in Shenzhen. There's nothing about this phone. And maybe they'll put it in boxes in the US and then they can say something about made in the US. But and the
they're going to put the shipping
mad.
label on it. And that's
and
where
they're selling it for $499. This is kind of like the Escobar phone, remember?
Yeah, I remember.
Yep.
The Escobar phone was what? It was a Galaxy Z. It was a Z Fold.
Yeah.
It was the original Fold, and it was like all themed up and plated. But
I bet if you peel the labels under here, it'll say T-Mobile Revel. 5,000 milliamp hour, 20 watts of charging. 50 megapixel main camera and 2 sticker cams, 2 megapixel depth and macro cameras. Not too bad. 256 gigs of storage, 12 gigs of RAM. Who knows what the processor is? Probably some Dimensity of some kind, and because that's what the Revel had. $499 when you can buy a Revel. You could buy a Revel for like $200 back in the day when it was out a year ago or whenever it was. I had one for a while.
My favorite part is that it doesn't have 5G.
Oh, it's even worse than the Revel because the Revel did have 5G. So there you go. And so, Max believes that this is made by Wingtech, which is based in, owned by Luxshare, which is it's a China-based, Hong Kong-based company. They make a lot of ODM phones. So yeah, there you go, folks.
Listen to this last part of the article. The last line of the article says, Trump Mobile is clearly aiming for the Trump fan vote with the T1. What they'll get from their money is a mid-rate Android device that won't live up to the plastic shine of its golden exterior.
Oh yeah, it's gold.
That's quite on brand. Well, I'm good.
Enrique, do you want to tell folks where they can find you on the internet, your social media handles, all that other stuff?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you for asking. I'm at Enrique VT on all socials. That's Enrique, ENRIQUE, VT. TEE. But where I'm really trying to focus my work on right now is on my personal brand called Cybernut. And you can find that at Cybernut HQ. It's an evolving brand right now, but I'm also going to launch a website, cybernuthq.com, where you can go there and you can click on the links and find us on socials. You can find the latest YouTube videos there as well. And it's really different from general tech YouTube. It's very much tech related, but you don't have to be a techie to enjoy the things that we talk about. We do things like watch memes and read comments, or we will read comments on tech stuff going on. It's a really good time. I really appreciate if you come watch, come enjoy, give us a follow.
Absolutely. Go check Enrique's awesome stuff on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, folks. And you know where to find me. I'm at Tank Girl, TNKGRL, like the comic book character Tank Girl. Just drop all the vowels. That's my handle everywhere. I'm on all the social, but mostly active on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads. So find me and Enrique there. Tell us what you think of the show, questions, all that stuff. And then, the podcast lives at mobiletechpodcast.com on all the major podcasting platforms. So if you're your first time here, please subscribe. Also use your favorite app to rate or review the show. That would be great. And then there's YouTube channel, of course, youtube.com/mobiletechpodcasts. You know how YouTube works. Like, subscribe, tell your friend, click the bell, comment, all that good stuff. There's some videos on there. The most recent one is a hands-on with the Razer series from when I was in New York for that. But yeah, stay tuned for more videos there. And then if you want to support me, Patreon. There's a Patreon, and you get a video version of this podcast through this Patreon, and it's $5 a month. And you get one every week. And the trick is you get in advance. So before the free public audio version, you can watch us on video, hold devices, and make jokes and silly faces and all that good stuff in advance for just $5 a month. So if you want to support me and appreciate it, consider joining the Patreon, patreon.com/TNKGRL. And I want to thank our sponsor, Mint Mobile. I review a lot of phones, so I'm constantly juggling multiple devices. While that's fun, it also means I'm spending a lot of money for wireless service on multiple SIMs. Thankfully, there's Mint Mobile, and that's who I'm teaming up with for today's podcast. If you want to save money on your wireless service, switch to Mint Mobile. You've probably seen the Mint Mobile ads featuring Ryan Reynolds, but let me quickly tell you how fantastic their service is, especially for tech-savvy early adopters like us. Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for as low as $15 a month, and you don't have to sacrifice any coverage, speed, or data. They're built on the nation's largest 5G network. They keep costs low because they sell direct to you online. They cut out the retail stores and salespeople. Why should you pay more than you have to for access to the same network? In my experience testing phones, Mint Mobile delivers the same data speeds and call quality as the big three for a fraction of the cost. Switching to Mint is super easy. Thanks to their eSIMs, you can sign up and activate immediately right on your phone from the comfort of your home. No more standing around waiting in line at a big wireless store. You can keep your current devices and phone number and easily switch services. And if your phone isn't eSIM compatible, Mint will ship you a new SIM card free of charge. The whole process only takes 15 minutes, and if you get stuck, Mint has a great customer service team to get you through it. All Mint Mobile plans include unlimited nationwide talk and text, plus lightning-fast 5G and free mobile hotspot. Mint will show you how much data you use each month and recommend plans that save you money. Mint also offers a modern family plan that lets you set up a super affordable family plan with as little as 2 lines. Use my link, mintmobile.com/mobiletech, to get premium wireless starting at $15 a month. Stop paying more than you need on your wireless bill and start saving big with Mint Mobile. And I want to thank you, Enrique, for joining me on this mad podcast.
Thank you so much for having me again. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. We'll have you on the show again in the future. And folks, we will have a show next week, so stay tuned for that. Until then, cheers, everybody.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.